Hey guys, check out Italian Wine Unplugged 2.0, brought to you by Mama Jumbo Shrimp, a fully updated second edition, reviewed and revised by an expert panel of certified Italian wine ambassadors from across the globe. The book also includes an edition by Professore Attilio Scienza, Italy's leading vine geneticist. To pick up a copy today, just head to Amazon.com or visit us at mamajumboshrimp.com.
Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Listen in as we journey to some of Italy's most beautiful places in the company of those who know them best, the families who grow grapes and make fabulous wines. Through their stories, we will learn not just about their wines, but also about their ways of life, the local and regional foods and specialities that pair naturally with their wines, and the most beautiful places to visit. We have a wonderful journey of discovery ahead of us, and I hope you will join me. Welcome to Wine, Food and Travel with me, Marc Millon, on Italian Wine Podcast. Today we travel to Italy's deep south, to Puglia, and in particular to the area known as the Murgia, to meet my guest, Sebastiano de Corato of the Rivera Winery. Buongiorno, Sebastiano. Many thanks for being my guest today. How are you?
Buongiorno, and thanks for inviting me. I'm very well, thanks.
Oh, that's great. Sebastiano, we met at Vinitaly, Italy's largest and most important gathering of the Italian wine world, bringing together producers, buyers, journalists, everyone involved in Italian wine. It's vast and exhausting, but it's such an important point of reference for the Italian wine world. How was your Vinitaly?
It was great. In a way, it was the first full-time Vinitaly after the pandemic. So it was also a great chance to meet some people we hadn't seen for some time, especially our importers from all the different export markets.
Yes, of course. It did have that sense of excitement again. I'd missed Vinitaly as well, so it was nice to be able to come back and see that whole Italian wine world again. I hope it was useful commercially as well.
Yes, but we will see results in the coming months.
Of course. Now, Sebastiano, you're far away from Verona now. Take us to your world, to the Murgia. Can you describe where you are, what the terroir is like, what the countryside is like? Is the sun shining? And are your vines coming back to life now?
Well, yes. So we are in Puglia, but Puglia is a very large region and concept. It's Puglia corresponds to, very easy to locate, corresponds to the hill of the Booth. So like a hill, or actually like a stiletto, is a very long and narrow region. And so it can also be considered a region that encompasses a number of sub-regions. The Murgia is the name of a range of hills, which is the most ancient part of Puglia, that starts, let's say, at 1/3 of the length of Puglia and covers the middle third of Puglia. I hope I can give an image that people can see in their minds. So Puglia, Murgia, is this range of hills in the middle part of Puglia, some 20-30 kilometers away from the sea, and that goes quite along the coast of Puglia. Puglia has its orientation is not north to south, but is northwest to southeast, and this is the same direction that Murgia has. I was mentioning that Murgia is the most ancient part of Puglia, but I would say of the whole southern Italy before lands emerged. Murgia was like an island. It was a rocky island because Murgia is like a massive rock, 200 kilometers long, very, very ancient, that has been modeled by wind and rain into a very kind of soft hills. You could even call it a high plain with an average altitude of 400 meters. So that is the highest, with peaks up to 550 meters. So you could say it's the highest part of Puglia. In the northern part of the Murgia Hills, what it is called Alta Murgia, so the high Murgia, the landscape is very rugged and desertic because, as I said, this is a rocky massive. There is very little soil, and there are no cities, no towns on the Murgia Hills. All the cities in this area are down between the Murgia and the sea. There is a stretch of some 20, 30 kilometers. So it's where all the cities are located. But again, on the Murgia Hills, there's not much growing, but wheat and vineyards. And in the highest hill of the Murgia Hills, you can see from very far away a strange building, which actually is Castel del Monte. Castel del Monte is one of the symbols of Puglia, is in the UNESCO World Heritage List, and as the name says, it is a castle built on the top of a mountain. This is a very, very unique place. It was built by Frederick II. He was emperor of the Holy Roman Empire back in 13th century. The Holy Roman Empire, it was the empire founded by Charlemagne in 800, and actually its heart was in Germany, so it was a kind of a pan-European empire, also including northern Italy and southern Italy, but not the central part of Italy because that was ruled by the popes. And Frederick II was a German of German origins, but he loved I guess he loved the sun, the food, and hopefully the wine of Puglia. Was most of his life he was living in Puglia, where he built many, many castles. Every city in Puglia has a castle built by Frederick II, but those are, let's say, normal standard castles for defense, like square with square towers. Only Castel del Monte is very, very unique because it's built in the middle of, it is today in the middle of nowhere, 20 kilometers from the nearest city. So let us imagine 800, 900 years ago. But it was more than a castle. It's like a symbol. It's the symbol of the imperial power. And this is one of the reasons why it is built in the perfect octagonal shape, because the octagon was a very important 8, and the octagon was a very important number and shape. Imagine that the imperial crown was octagonal, because 8 was the number of perfection, the number of God, so had a powerful meaning. And it's like this emperor placed this stone crown on the top of the hill so that everybody could see his power. And we have also to think that at those times there was a continuous clash of power between the Pope, so the spiritual power trying to be also temporal, and the emperors. And Frederick II had many quarrels with the different popes. So it's a very, very interesting history.
Very interesting, Sebastiano. And of course, Frederick II designed Castel del Monte himself. He had many talents. He was a great thinker, almost a precursor of the Renaissance man, would you say? He had so many interests. He spoke many languages. He wrote poetry. He wrote about falconry, which we'll perhaps speak about in a minute. But also he was an architect, and he actually designed the Castel del Monte.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He was is probably one of the greatest characters in medieval history. And as you said, he was at least 2 centuries ahead. Because at the times, most emperors were mostly warriors. But he was... held in great value culture. He founded the first public university in Europe and probably the world in Salerno. And as you say, he loved other cultures. This was very, very unusual at the time, including Muslim culture. And those were the times of the Crusades. So when the Muslims were the enemies, yet every good emperor had to reconquer Jerusalem, organize a crusade. And actually, this is a very nice story. Frederick II was the only emperor and crusade leader who was able to enter Jerusalem without fighting. Because when he camped outside of Jerusalem, he wrote a letter in Arabic, because he could speak and write in Arabic, to the head of the Muslims in Jerusalem, who actually invited him to come in. And they signed a treaty so that the Christians could, without any danger, get inside Jerusalem and go to their holy places and pray. The other funny part was that the Pope, instead of being happy, he was very, very unhappy because there was no fighting. So he excommunicated Frederick II for this. That was a very, very kind of funny story. Not so funny for Frederick, because he had uprisings in his empire when he was away. So he had to fight his way back to power.
I think he was excommunicated more than once, wasn't he?
Yeah, the first time because he was delaying too much the organization of the crusade. Then when he finally made it, the Pope was not impressed or not happy, not with the results, but the way the results were achieved.
Now, I would imagine, in fact, Frederick also had a great interest in wine. I think at Castel del Monte, he introduced grape varieties into the vineyards there. And also there is documentation of particular wines that he had placed orders for, I think from Ciro, from the Galliopo grape. And of course, he loved Montefalco. So there are a lot of connections with wine. But let's turn now to the story of wine in Castel del Monte, which is also the name of the DOC and the DOCG, and in particular to the story of the Rivera winery.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Castel del Monte area, and now it's, as you say, DOC and DOCG, has a long history in viticulture and wine production. Also, it is interesting that besides most other Apulian wine growing regions being focused in red wine production and also a little bit of rosé, Castel del Monte has been traditionally producing white wines, rosé wines, and red wines in equal parts. So it's a very, very balanced production by tradition, and this is because of the elevation, because it allows grapes to ripen in a slower, more slowly, and if you think about white wines, that is quite important to retain acidity. Also, the varietals of Castel del Monte, the indigenous varietals of Castel del Monte, they are all quite late ripening varietals. And I will mention now the most important indigenous varietals, which are Bombino Bianco, as the name says, it's of course a white grape varietal for white. Bombino Nero, in a way, it's related, of course, to Bombino Bianco, but it's black, but not that black. So it is a varietal that is exclusively used for rosé wine production. Castel del Monte has a very old tradition of rosé wine production, and it's home of the first Italian rosé wine DOCG that was granted in 2011. And of course, red wines, mainly produced with the indigenous varietal Nero di Troia, which is the most important indigenous grape varietal of the whole of northern Puglia, and very specifically of Castel del Monte appellation. So viticulturally, the area has a lot to offer to wine producers. But what is quite important, that all those wines have a really northern touch. They are a bit different from what people expect from Puglia. If people know from Puglia, they typically will know varietals from the south, so Primitivo or Negro Amaro. And those are really southern varietals, early ripening and making wines which are very, very concentrated, rich, also with quite a high alcohol content. On the opposite, in Castel del Monte, all the varietals, as I said, have something in common: the late ripening, high acidity for whites and for reds for rosé, so Bombino Nero, and firm tannins, because for Nero di Troia has all late ripening varietals and very, very moderate alcohol content. Let's say even in Reserva version, and Nero di Troia will pay between 13.5 and 14% in alcohol. I would say only if you compare it with Primitivo, where alcohol content could go as high as 16 or 17%. So it's a quite different style of wines, focusing on less power and fruit richness, but more on elegance and length on the palate. And as we are talking about red wines, aging potential, which is surprising.
Okay, so I think that's very important distinction you've made, Sebastiano, to help our listeners understand that the Salento, this stiletto heel, as you described it, that comes down at the bottom of the Italian boot, is a very different world completely from the Alta Murgia, with these limestone hills, a very rocky, stony soil, and the elevation, of course, with the Salento's relatively flat, isn't it? And we're here now, 300-400 meters. So these are factors that really make a real distinction. But also the grape varieties you've mentioned, which I think for our listeners as well are perhaps less well known. You know, we're not familiar with Bombino, or indeed Nero di Troia is less readily available. Is that because it's a smaller area, fewer producers?
Yes, there are fewer producers for sure. If you put together all the producers of Salento, it's maybe 80% of the Apulian wine producers are located in Salento. The rest will be located in the central northern part, which is Castel del Monte, but also the other appellations in the province of Foggia, which is the northernmost area of Puglia. Also, I would say that these varietals are not so well known because the single varietal wine concept was only developed around the year 2000, because especially for Bombino Bianco and Nero di Troia. Let's say that the tradition for the area was to blend those varietals with a complementary varietal. This was a way that ancient growers would, in a way, correct or cover, let's say, flaws of their main grape varietal. For example, I was to mention the acidity of Bombino Bianco. This in the past was considered an issue, having a too acidic wine. Now we know how to handle the acidity and how to make it an advantage point, so freshness in wines. But at that time it was seen as a problem to be solved. And in the old time, solving such enological problems was impossible in wineries. So this was done in the vineyards. So by blending and doing what we would call a field blend, so planting more than one varietal in the same vineyard, for example, for Bombino Bianco with a local low acidity varietal called Pampanuto, as well as for Nero di Troia, where for Nero di Troia the tannins, the firm tannins from the very thick skin of the varietal was seen as a problem. There was winemaking was very, very simple. Now we have many ways, technology and knowledge and equipment, so that we can do better macerations and achieve softer tannins. But at the time that was impossible. So the best solution was to blend Nero di Troia with Montepulciano. Montepulciano is a much more famous varietal for sure. Most people associate it correctly to Abruzzo, but actually Montepulciano is traditionally cultivated on the whole Adriatic coast, from Marche region, so from central Italy down to Puglia. And in Puglia, growers learned to blend Montepulciano to Nero di Troia to soften the wines. So field blends were made with planting one row of Montepulciano every 2 rows of Nero di Troia. This is something we don't do anymore. We cultivate specific, like 100% varietal vineyards, but we keep doing this blend in our flagship wine, Il Falcone.
Italian Wine Podcast. If you think you love wine as much as we do, then give us a like and a follow anywhere you get your pods.
Well, let's talk about Il Falcone, because this again links us back to Frederick II, to Castel del Monte, but it's long been, the Rivera Il Falcone has long been considered one of the great red wines of not just Puglia, but of all of Italy. So it's been a wine your family have been making a long time. It's a wine that I've enjoyed on many occasions, and it was great to taste it again in Verona. So it's an important flagship cru wine for you.
Absolutely. But I have to mention this, that the winery was a little history of the winery. It was founded by my grandfather, Sebastiano, so I bring his name as the full Italian tradition. In 1950 was the first official vintage of Rivera. My grandfather was, at the time, Apulian wine was not on the wine map. Puglia has always been producing a lot of wine, but it was all used as a bulk wine.
So sent up to be blended.
So there was no fine wine, and that was the goal.
Yes.
I don't want to say where, but it was sent north to be blended and to give alcohol and concentration to weaker wines from the north. So the goal of my grandfather was to create not only to produce fine wines, but to create a brand from Puglia, and that brand was Rivera. And so he started making the traditional wines, white, rosé, and red, and especially a red wine, which he called Stravecchio, Rivera Stravecchio, from those field blends of Nero di Troia and Montepulciano. That wine had a great personality. Then in 1971, this was the father of Il Falcone. So Il Falcone was born officially from 1971 vintage. So after more than 20 vintages, because that was the year Castel del Monte appellation was created.
Oh, okay.
At the time, my father had just joined my grandfather at the winery. So probably he brought new ideas, some new marketing ideas. So they thought that this wine had such a personality, it deserved to have a story. Storytelling, as we say today. And of course, thinking of Frederick II and his passion with falconry, and probably the fact that at the time those type of wines of fine red wines, Riserva wines, were said to be nicely matched to game. So even if there's not much game in Puglia, but anymore. But then I guess the association with the hunting, with falconry and game. So the idea came up to call the winery, the wine Il Falcone. So Il Falcone was born. Yeah. Since then, it has been wine that really represents the style of Rivera, of the winery. And for sure, it was the first fine, age-worthy red wine made in Puglia. With a name, in a way, going beyond the appellation. And since then, success has been very, very... We've had great success with the wine.
You produce another special cru wine that also references Frederick II, Puer Apuliae. Mm-hmm. Is that pronounced correctly?
Almost.
Almost, okay.
I know that the name is a little difficult. So Puer Apuliae.
Apuliae, okay.
Because the last two words are A and E, and those are Latin words, and in Latin, A and E are read E.
Okay.
You just don't pronounce the A.
Okay.
What does these two words mean? Puer means son, and Apuliae means of Puglia. So Puer Apuliae means son of Puglia. This was the nickname, one of the nicknames of Frederick II. The other one was Stupor Mundi, so wonder of the world. But Puer Apuliae, at the beginning, it was not used as a nice nickname or appellative, because this was given by the German feudal lords, barons, who didn't like the fact that Frederick was never in Germany, was only on vacation in Puglia. So they started calling him son of Puglia. Because when he was a young emperor, but I guess he took pride of it. And when we created this new wine, And this was the first ever 100% Nero di Troia Riserva being released in 2002. Vintage was 2000. We thought it was the time to use this name, which again, not easy to pronounce, but with a very, very powerful meaning.
Yes, and a powerful wine, a beautiful wine. I really enjoyed tasting that with you. Quite different from Il Falcone, perhaps a more lean, elegant style. The tannins, certainly there. It didn't have the roundness that Montepulciano gives Il Falcone, but it had a sort of majestic quality that I think is quite fitting for the reference to Frederick.
Thank you for the comment. What we, in a way, we imagine that we have been vinifying Nero di Troia and blending it with Montepulciano for 50 vintages. That after 50 vintages, we finally decide it was time, and we had finally made the let's say the advancement in winemaking, so that we will we're finally able to bottle Nero di Troia by itself without any help from Montepulciano, and then we ourselves discovered the beauty of Nero di Troia, because Montepulciano is pretty neutral, is a great varietal also in blending, also because it's neutral, doesn't cover the character of the other varietal, but of course it dilutes some of their characteristics. So in Pura Puglia we have the full characteristics of Nero di Troia. I realize I only mentioned or mostly mentioned the firm tannins, but Nero di Troia, what is the beauty of Nero di Troia is the aromas, where most varietals from southern areas tend to be have a very concentrated preserved dark fruit. Nero di Troia has only gives you hints of very fresh forest fruit like blueberries, so acid type of black dark fruit, and also floral notes. This is what is very special. Floral notes of what people recognize often is violet, which is a very delicate type of floral note, and a little herbal. So it is not only a big fruity Apulian red wine. It has a range of aromas, again from fruity to floral and to herbal, which makes it very elegant and in a way a little bit restrained if you compare it again with Primitivo, which is so voluminous.
Yes. I think it is that restraint that makes your wine so beautiful. They stand alongside the other great wines of Italy that have that elegance, from the north, Barolos, to the great wines of Tuscany. And I think the Pura Puglia and Falcone both are wines with this leaner style that is really, really beautiful.
Yes.
Sebastiano, just a few final questions because we need to wrap things up here. If visitors are coming to the Murgia, to your area of Puglia, is there one dish or food that they must try to sample?
Well, first of all, very few people, everybody knows burrata. It has become a standard in all Italian restaurants and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not many people know that burrata was invented in Andria, so our town. Also, Andria is the biggest extra virgin olive oil producing town in Italy and in Europe and probably the world.
These great, big, beautiful olive trees that have been suffering, but which are enormous and centuries old.
Yeah. So Puglia, and this part of Puglia is a big agriculture tradition. Also, the Murgia hills, besides being very difficult to cultivate, they offer a wide range of edible herbs that are used in Apulian country cuisine. So the cuisine here is really uses a lot of vegetable, especially, of course, in wintertime, because our green season is wintertime. Summertime is too dry, so everything becomes yellow. So relating to the use of greens and vegetables in our cuisine, probably the most famous dish from this area is orecchiette pasta. Orecchiette is nowadays is quite famous. It's this ear-shaped, handmade fresh pasta with cime di rape. Cime di rape is a vegetable of kale. It looks like broccoli. In fact, for example, in some markets, I found them in the US. They call them broccoli rape, but it's not really broccoli. Okay. But it looks like a broccoli with leaves, and it has a little bitterish aromas, a bitterish taste, and that is boiled with the pasta and then sautéed with, of course, extra virgin olive oil, garlic, and anchovies.
Okay, and anchovies.
Add another touch of bitterish taste, which makes it very, very interesting.
And maybe a little pepperoncino?
And pepperoncino, if you like, of course.
Final question, Sebastiano. Our listeners, if they should find themselves or making a visit into the Murgia, can they visit the Rivera winery?
Absolutely. Actually, we are also very, very easy to access to the winery because we are only 5 kilometers from Autostrada exit in Canosa. We host visits. We've always believed in opening our winery to visitors. We've been founders as a winery of Movimento Turismo del Vino. I've been myself president of Puglian Movimento Turismo del Vino for 6 years, and I'm currently vice president of the National Association. So we are open.
Great. Well, that's good to know. And what I think is important for our listeners to know as well is that at the Rivera winery, as in so many Italian wineries, wine is something that is really intimately linked to culture, to history, to identity as well.
Absolutely.
Sebastiano, it's been a real pleasure. It was a pleasure meeting in Verona and a real pleasure speaking with you again this morning. Thank you very much for being my guest today.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. And thank you, all the listeners.
Thank you. And I hope to meet again soon. Grazie. Buona giornata.
Ciao. Ciao, ciao.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.